There he is. Okay. Should we go? Tell me when we're live. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Cloud Expo in New York. November 13 is it today? 2018. We have a worldwide audience watching this live, as well as everybody here. If you're outside the room, come on in. We're about ready to start our keynote presentation. I'm Roger Struckoff. I'm the conference chair. I got to speak here yesterday, and I spoke about all the technologies that you'll encounter while you're at Cloud Expo. We've always, for the last 10 years, produced this show in New York and in Silicon Valley, and we think of it as cloud computing and everything that goes with it. And that changes slightly over the years. I was just discussing this with one of our attendees and delegates, and she's interested in the AI and machine learning aspect of what we're doing. A lot of people, we found out yesterday, were interested in blockchain, what was going on. So it's always very nice to hear that people are attending the sessions they want that relate to cloud. But during my presentation, and also during our thinking when we put this all together, is that all these technologies are not going to function unless you have a DevOps culture. And a lot of people will give you actually very strict sermons about that, but the reality is that unless you're thinking along the line of DevOps, if you've kind of gone from your agile type thinking you may have been doing a few years ago into a DevOps culture, it's going to be a very difficult migration to the cloud. So we're very happy this morning for our keynote to have Chris Brown from Nutanix come and talk about that very topic. So Chris, as you can see, is going to talk about DevOps, agility with technology. Really looking forward to it. So please welcome Chris Brown.
Good morning, everyone. So, how many people here have heard of Nutanix before? By show of hands. Okay, we got a couple of people. Awesome. I love talking about what we do to a new audience. Now, agility through technology is kind of a oxymoron in some ways. You know, when we talk about DevOps, we talk about that DevOps culture. We talk about, how we've got to change internally, we've got to change communication, improve all that. So how can technology help with that? Well, first I want to talk about how we see DevOps, or at least I don't know, I haven't polled everyone at the company. I'm sure we'll get as many different perspectives as there are people. But fundamentally, DevOps is the process of removing friction between developers and customer value. It's the process of making developers understand what their customer needs and delivering capabilities there faster. Now, I like this sentence for a few reasons. And most importantly, if you think about it, you'll realize that I'm missing something here. We talk about infrastructure. Nutanix started out as an infrastructure company. Where are the operators in this sentence? Well, they're there. They're that friction. This leads us to another realization, that infrastructure is not ran as a business. It is ran for the business. Even service providers who ostentatiously run infrastructure for their business are actually running that infrastructure to sell a service on that infrastructure. They're not building infrastructure for infrastructure's sake. Nobody runs Apache because they love running Apache. I mean, sure, there's somebody somewhere who runs Apache in their basement just because they love Apache so much. But in general, you run it to do something. Nobody runs a storage array because they just love managing LUNs. So this means that we need to figure out how do we get rid of those arcane spells, the LUNs, the RTO, RPO, the recovery policy, all of these things that we combine together in order to create infrastructure. How do we get rid of that and connect back to what actually matters? The services built on top of it. That's the only effective way to use the cloud. And that's really what DevOps methodology is about, is increasing communication between teams. And if you're speaking two different languages, well, you're never going to be able to communicate properly. So this leads us to the third realization, and that is that the data center itself needs a reboot. That's why people like the cloud. People like the cloud because it's a different way forward. I mean, I don't want to tell you why you like it, but it's what I've heard, it's what I've seen, is that it's because it gets rid of all of that arcane, crazy stuff that you've got to do, the random interfaces, the random command lines you've got to type, in order to just get infrastructure. Just get your platform so you can actually build something of value. So we need to reboot it. We need to bring that same methodology on-prem. And Nutanix, that's where we started, with a fully software-defined solution that allows us to run any application at scale. That is designed application-focused, not abstraction-focused, not on, once again, runs, not on even VMs, on the application as a whole, because that's what matters. That service is what matters. So, back in 2009, that was our axiom. That's what we started out as. And we, as we said, replatformed the data center. We got rid of all of this complex craziness, all of these different components, all of the different infrastructure components, and merged them together into a single software-defined stack that easily scaled out, which then allowed you to run your applications on. So what is Nutanix? Well, HCI infrastructure, of course, right? That's what we're known for. Well, we're not at DevOps at Infrastructure Expo. We're at DevOps at Cloud Expo. So I'm going to refer to this as HCI infrastructure and cut all that out. I'm not here to talk about that today. Instead, what I'm here to talk about is how we've taken that farther. Is because just rebooting the infrastructure doesn't do enough for us. We also need to extend up into the cloud. We need to extend first into application automation. Because what the cloud does so well is fleets of resources, microservices, throwing resources. Gotta remember not to talk as aggressive in my hands because there's a mic there this time. The only way to manage a fleet of resources is with automation. Because humans are notoriously bad at forgetting things. I mean, how many people here have at one point fat-fingered something? I know I have. Beyond that, though, we also need to reach up into a multi-cloud environment. The future and the present is not private cloud. It's not hybrid cloud. It's not public cloud. It's multi-cloud. It's using Azure and AWS and GCP and on-premise pieces, or edge pieces, or distributed, robo sites. All of these clouds need to work together in order to get rid of all of this the complexity. And that's what we mean. That's what we mean when we say multi-cloud. Is that you're not using just one cloud. In IT, everything is a choice. Every cloud, every tool, every piece of infrastructure is just another tool in your toolbox. Just like you wouldn't build a house using only a hammer, you can't build an infrastructure using one tool. You can't build an application using one tool. You need a variety, using the right one for the right job. And we'll dive more into that in a moment. So, from that initial base, which is what we call modernizing infrastructure, we reach out and take a journey to automating application automation, or management, I should say. And then finally, converging clouds together, bringing all of these disparate pools of public cloud and private cloud and any other type of cloud you want to throw out there, edge cloud, distributed cloud, robo cloud, I don't know. You can call anything a cloud and it sounds like it's something that exists today. But bring them all together in one unified plane so that we can actually talk about applications as a whole rather than as disparate infrastructures that make them up, rather than as different components that limit us in different ways. So what are the challenges with multi-cloud? Well, just because we're in a multi-cloud, one of the challenges is presenting. tried unplugging it and replugging it every day. Screen blinked, but. Go look. Yeah, something.
It's not.
No. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Something get kicked or? It's got power. Try this. Okay, go look again. And we're back. Hooray! So, what are the challenges when it comes to working in a multi-cloud environment? Well, just because we are in a cloud-first or cloud-native world doesn't mean that IT's imperatives and IT's job has changed. Overall, we've got to lower TCO. We've got to make sure that we're not wasting money. We've got to get the most bang for our buck in the cloud. This is true anywhere. Nobody likes paying extra for something they don't need. We need to make sure that we're moving faster. Just because we moved into a cloud first or started using public clouds doesn't mean we immediately are as fast as we could be. There's always ways to improve. Next is that we need to really use these to be able to connect back into the business, be able to connect back into the services, and really start having those conversations. So we need to be able to present the information we have in an easy-to-use, easy-to-consume way that doesn't violate any of our security policies, any of our cost policies, or any of our compliance policies. So the first set of products I'm going to talk about here are products designed around operating in this multi-cloud environment. First, we've got Xi Cloud Services. Now, this is going to sound a little strange, but really what Xi Cloud Services are, anything with Xi in its name, is a SaaS service delivered by Nutanix for managing multi-cloud or extending natively into the cloud across environments. The first one of these services is Xi Beam, which gives us multi-cloud governance, cost optimization, and security. Next, we have Xi Epoch, which gives us application monitoring, focusing on the application itself, not VM stats or container stats or storage stats, focusing on what the application is doing at a very granular level, and giving us observability into those application stacks across environments. And then finally, we need a true multi-cloud operations plane, and this is Nutanix Com, which is integrated directly into our platform and allows us to orchestrate workloads between clouds and across clouds. So let's take a look into these a little bit further. First, what is Xi Cloud? I'm going to be saying Xi a lot today because all of the products, as you saw, are labeled Xi. So I feel like I probably should give you a proper definition. Well, as we started with appliances, we realized that we need to be able to take that software stack and bring it anywhere. Bring it to not only your data center, but your edge, but your robo sites. We have that software running on barges and terminals and stores across everywhere. But we also need to bring it into the public cloud and be able to run our own public cloud that allows us to deliver services that would be impossible without us owning both sides of the infrastructure. And that's what Xi is services delivered from that unified cloud infrastructure. For example, one of the services that unfortunately we can't demo today, but we are going to be diving more into at our conference in London in just a couple of weeks, is Xi IoT. And we give it the tagline Intelligent Edge here. Basically, Xi IoT combines three things. First, it is a very lightweight computing stack on the edge for real-time processing. This can be Nutanix, it can be a NUC, it can be a little device, huge variety of options. This connects into a centralized management plane to allow us to see all of our edges worldwide. And then finally, combines that with a data pipeline to take data and processing from the edge into our choice of public cloud. This is only possible because we run our own infrastructure, our own cloud infrastructure, Xi Cloud. Now, we will be getting more into this later this month, as I mentioned. But if you've got any questions, you can check this out on our website as well. Next, let's get into those SaaS products. First is Xi Beam. The rename is recent, so I'm still getting used to saying Xi instead of Nutanix here. Xi Beam gives us two critical components for managing a cloud. First is cost visibility and optimization. It's the ability to see where we're spending our money and how we can cut that down. For example, it can tell you, hey, you've got snapshots that are 30 days old, or you've got this instance that hasn't been used in 2 weeks, or you've got a VM or a cloud instance that really can be downsized. Giving you that information and telling you how to optimize your spend. At the same time, it gives you purchase planning decisions, telling you, hey, this instance would be much better purchased as a reserved instance. Or you should purchase this many reserved instances to save this much. And giving you that information right at the front of at the tip of your fingers. Next, it allows you to do financial governance across teams and across clouds, tying back spend to particular projects or particular groups, so you can see who's spending what, where, and how you can optimize on that. And then finally, it lets us do security compliance audits across our cloud environments. And we'll dive into that a little bit more because security is always one of those that is very fascinating and can have a lot of different meanings to people. First, here we've got a dashboard for cost optimization. We can see what clouds we're spending money in, what kinds of instances we're purchasing, how efficient we're being, and ways that we can save. Oh, I advanced too many. Well. And that's what we can see from cost optimization. This is a really powerful tool because there's always hidden resources or waste or things you don't need, ways to cut down and save and make the most out of your dollar. And Beam shows you where that is. Next, Beam gives us security compliance across clouds, across environments, in a unified place. One of the important things to note about both this and the cost optimization is that we believe strongly at Nutanix about one click. Why just tell you information if we can also fix it with one click? So, Beam will do security audits for you. It'll run standardized policies. If you're healthcare, maybe you need HIPAA. If you're processing credit cards, you need PCI DSS or whatever other standardized security suite here. You can also define your own operations so that you have your own security that gets applied and audited and managed across clouds, as well as remediated in one click. It'll give you the API call, and you can either have Beam make the call for you, or you can call it on your own. It's up to you. This finally lets us get end-to-end view of two critical components of cloud: spend, security. Every month, or even every week, it seems like there's another breach of massive data because somebody was using an unsecured S3 bucket. All it takes is one person to misconfig or configure something differently because they really need to get that FTP server running and they really want to get it, they just open it up to let it happen. For your data to start leaking. And we need to be able to catch that and remediate it as quick as possible, if not prevent it from happening to start. Beam is available as a SaaS service. You can go to Nutanix.com/Beam today and start a 14-day trial of Beam. You don't need any Nutanix anywhere else. Log in, get started, get your cloud report. The next product we're going to talk about here is Xi Epoch. Now, Epoch gives us multi-cloud application monitoring and observability. It dives deep into the application to understand what are the flows. Is it transactions we care about? Is it packets? Is it port communication? What do we want to measure, and what do we want to be warned if it happens? It allows us to set up our own KPIs. Say, hey, if this database drops to 500 transactions per second, send me an alert. That's my problem. And this answers a very important question, is how do we troubleshoot applications that span clouds? If our database is running in Azure and our applications are running in GCP, how can we quickly narrow down where a performance problem is coming from? Is it the application? Is it the new code update we did? Is it something happened on the database side? Epoch gives us that information, front and center, and then allows us to test our theories quickly when troubleshooting a problem. Here we have a view of an Epoch map, and don't worry, I don't expect you to be able to read that because that is very tiny, even on my screen here. Epoch can monitor on a range of different information. Collect it all together, send it up into the cloud, and give you views and monitoring capability for your entire application. Now, just like Beam, Xi Epoch is a SaaS service that's available today, or available at the end of this month. You can sign up for the early access or check out a trial at Nutanix.com/Epoch. At the end of the month at our .next conference, we're going to have a whole lot more information about this as the product goes on the march towards GA. Finally, we need a management plane that connects our clouds together and let us orchestrate between environments and between clouds. And that's where COM comes in. COM has three main components. First is the application lifecycle management, that application automation. When managing fleets of resources, we need automation. We cannot rely on pen and paper or human to keep track of everything. Automation is key to any cloud deployment, any successful scale. And so that's a core piece of COM. Next is that once we understand how to automate your application, how your application runs, we can publish that self-service to different groups or users based on their role in the company. Across clouds, which is the third piece here, multi-cloud orchestration. COM's goal is to understand your application end-to-end, understand dependencies between components, and understand what you need to do for how operations run on it, how to back it up, how to upgrade it, and so on. It can then take that understanding to any cloud environment, move it between AWS and GCP and provision to a new place, or Azure and AWS, or ESXi and AWS, or anywhere else. Because at the end of the day, I mentioned earlier about useless abstractions. The cloud is just another one. It's not your application. What matters is your application and how you use it. COM wants to understand your application end to end. So, it's great for provisioning, and if you look at any of the demo videos we have for COM, we're going to talk about provisioning because, let's be honest, provisioning new workloads is the most visually appealing demo. But it can be used for any task that you do on a repeatable basis. We have customers using COM for just a database backup. They had a team where there was only one person who knew how to back up their database, and he was only available to do it on Saturdays, which, is obviously not great in many ways because they're not redundant in case something happens, but that's what's been working for them. They took that backup task and automated it in COM so that anybody could trigger it at any time during the week so they could perform their other maintenance and gain back their weekends. You can use it for scaling workloads, for deleting workloads and cleaning up after deletion, and then upgrading it and repeating. Whatever you need is possible with COM. Once you have the blueprint, once you have the application definition, you can then publish that to a self-service marketplace where users can either directly from COM launch applications across clouds or through integration with CMDB get access to these workloads. Rather than single VM, single workload, no, we want to be able to deploy an end-to-end application on demand across environments wherever we need it, when we need it. We also have a set of pre-integrated blueprints here. These blueprints are made by Nutanix as a way to get started or try out a new application. For example, we have Kubernetes in the marketplace, and we've seen a lot of people download it because they want to try a Kubernetes cluster. Or you can take it and customize it for your own need. So COM gives you a very flexible choice in compute. You could work across AWS, Azure, GCP, as well as Nutanix AHV, which is our own hypervisor, and ESXi anywhere, on and off Nutanix. But there's a third dimension to this as well, and that's container. Because VMs and cloud instances are, they're great, but they're not the future. Containers are. COM treats Kubernetes like any other cloud. You can have an application made up of VMs, cloud instances, and containers orchestrated all together or translate over from VMs to containers at your own speed, and COM doesn't lose any of its config, any of its provisioning steps, any of its, gotta remember to stop moving my hands, any of its dependencies or operations you've defined. But this raises another good question. Why containers? I'm sure we all do know what containers are here, but why containers? Why is that what's happening? Well, if we take a look, I go out to San Jose fairly often, and if you sit in a coffee shop in San Jose, you'll hear developers arguing between different technology. You'll hear why React is better than Node, it's better than Angular. You'll hear why Ruby is, garbage and you need to change over to this. Constant debates back and forth, which is why there's so many products out there. It seems like every day there's some new crazy name for some developer product we need. So it's kind of strange to realize that everyone in San Jose knows the Greek word for helmsman, which is Kubernetes. So let's take a look and figure out, is Kubernetes growing? What's happening there? So here we take a look at the Google search trends back about a month ago. And we see that Kubernetes is taking off. But this doesn't really give me a frame of reference for how quickly it's taking off or how that compares to other things. So let's compare that to something else, something we've heard as well, and that's Docker. Okay, so Docker is really much higher than Kubernetes, and that makes sense. It's a more mature product, and it's a prerequisite for Kubernetes. This still doesn't tell me where containers sit in the mindshare of developers and professionals, IT professionals. In order to do that, we need to look at something else. Let's look at VMware. And there we can clearly see it. Docker and Kubernetes is overtaking basically this is showing us that containers are overtaking VMs in mindshare. This is the future that everyone is moving towards and where we're growing. And this makes a lot of sense because Docker containers give us a ton of benefits. They include other libraries. They're portable. They are able to be deployed wherever you need them. They are immutable so you can deploy whatever version you need. There's a lot of benefits, but there's also challenges. Things like how do we manage containers across environments, across clouds, across pods? How do we restart failed containers? How do we handle HA? How do we replace containers when a node itself dies? How do we scale out these workloads manually or based on the load, based on metrics that we can set and follow? How do we upgrade and roll back our apps? Kubernetes answers all of these and more. Gives us the ability to do those one-click upgrades, one-click rollbacks. The ability to automatically manage our containers across environments, and place containers where they will be most effective or have the most resources. So containers and Kubernetes are the final piece. Well, the final piece of what? Well, if we're looking at what it takes to develop cloud-native apps today, this is the core compute component. What are the other pieces? Well, the first is storage. And we have a wide variety of storage options. We've got NFS or block for, file or block for traditional applications. Enterprise applications might be moving over to containers, but using an external mount point. We need object storage for cloud-native applications that's accessed over HTTP and is quickly scalable. The core piece of these is that it's all accessed through standard APIs, NFS, iSCSI, HTTP. So that means we can swap out the underlying storage, the underlying provider, without changing our application. And there's tons of offerings for these, to run in the cloud, in your data center. There's services you can buy from public clouds, a variety of options. More specifically, though, specialized state is stored in databases. And we've standardized on, I wouldn't say standardized, but in general, you've got Postgres, MySQL, MS SQL, and Oracle. There's a few others, but each one of those types can be accessed with a common client. You can connect to any MySQL database without changing your application using this MySQL client. For the most part. There's always exceptions. There's no hard and fast rule. You can, for the most part, connect to any MySQL. And there are services offered by clouds that give you that client access. So you can move your app to the cloud very quickly and easily without having to rewrite your application. So there's no reason that we can't have this same experience across clouds and on-prem. How do we connect those dots together? If we take a look at this gives us our full cloud-native stack. We have our compute, which is containers. We have our database, which is MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, or MS SQL if you want that. Variety of options. And you've got your storage types. You've got your block, your file, and your buckets. Or your object. I'm already jumping to product names. And this is what Nutanix delivers built on our platform. Built on that core HCI, which gets rid of a lot of the old technological debt that we carried forward from traditional three-tier architectures. Simplify that and then build these new cloud-native apps on top of it, giving us a single unified platform for enterprise and cloud-native applications. First piece of that is Nutanix Karbon. Nutanix Karbon is our own opinionated Kubernetes version. It is completely upstream. We don't change it. We made some decisions, packaged it up, made it one click, added some API pieces on our end to reach into Kubernetes, but it is just bog standard Kubernetes. Using one-click deploy, one-click upgrade, allowing you to manage multiple Kubernetes clusters together with built-in monitoring and quick startup. So this gives us the ability to manage VMs and containers from the Nutanix platform. But that's not enough. Next, we have Nutanix Era, which allows us to abstract out the database. Nutanix Era gives us a standardized API for database access and allows us to change the back-end database engine as we need. We can one-click provision from a catalog that we build or inherit, as well as define recovery points and recovery SLAs. But that's not all. Era also gives us deep copy data management tools, allowing us to do time machine rollbacks to a point in time, allow us to clone databases in one click, and refresh those clones. That way you can actually run your development against true production data or whatever other kind of crazy copying you want to do. It allows you to back up and restore in one click, allowing you to protect the data. So this allows you to transform a traditional database using your choice of database engine into a more database as a service experience across environments with a standardized API. Finally, we have what Nutanix's core was, storage. And this has two pieces. Well, three, but I forgot to put one on here, so pretend I did. First is Nutanix Buckets, which is a native object store built on the platform, giving us S3-compatible object storage wherever we have Nutanix. On the edge, on the cloud, and in the data center, wherever you need it. They can all be worked together. Then, of course, there's Nutanix Volumes, which is native distributed block storage, accessed through iSCSI. If you want to give a container a direct mount, or you want to bridge the gap between if you've still got some physical machines or what have you. It allows you to define that storage on the same platform as your object, as your file, as your VM, as your container storage, all together in a single unit. So what is Nutanix? We've talked for a while here, but let's go back to that first question. What are we? Well, we're a single OS for a cloud-like HCI infrastructure everywhere. We're developer-focused PaaS services delivered everywhere. And finally, we're a portfolio of SaaS cloud services for multi-cloud everywhere. Now, we covered a ton of things here. I threw a lot of products at you and said a lot of random words and had some technical problems. It's all part of the fun. But after the break, my colleague, Mark Lavi, is going to come down and give you a demo of Calm, of Beam, of Epoch. I believe I don't want to put any words in his mouth, so I'm going to leave it at that. And anything else that he's got. So you can see these products in action, because it's easy to make slides look good. It's easy for me to say that this is awesome. Using it and seeing it in action are two very different things. So please join us after the break for that. Our booth is also right out in the back of these doors, so if you have any questions about any of these things, we've got experts that are ready to answer them. Thank you all for your time today.